Hello, I'm Tom Kennemer for ETV. Leo Thorsness was a true American hero, a recipient of the Medal of Honor, our nation's highest military award for valor. Leo, a former resident of Madison County, passed away recently, and in tribute to his service to our country, we want to broadcast for the first time an interview we did at Lee High School before he moved to Florida to be closer to family. Here now is that interview. Let's start off with, where did you grow up? Where are you originally from?
I grew up Little House on the Prairie, Walnut Grove, Minnesota. Went to high school there, farm kid.
Laura Ingalls, did you know Laura Ingalls?
You know, the other day, some smart, I like high school kids said, did you ever date her?
Yeah.
She's only 100 years older than I. But
Right. Now, how did you meet your wife, Gayle?
Met her in the registration line, first day of college, and 4 lines, 8 here, and I'm in a T line, and best looking lady there, so I got in that line.
Yeah,
and by the time she registered, I sneaked over to my line then.
Now, when did you first go into service, Leo?
I joined in 1951. I found out in college I was not ready for college. I was not a good academic student, and I didn't apply myself except for sports and girls, and had a good high school. So I said, I'll join the military, enlist, serve my 4 years, grow up, get a GI Bill, and come back to college. During that 4 years, they said, we need some pilots. If you're coordinated, take some tests. I did, and it turned out I was a good fighter pilot, and I didn't have to be real smart to do that, but I had good coordination, so I stayed as a career.
Great. But you did start out as an enlisted man. And how long did you say?
I was enlisted and plus a cadet about close to 4 years.
Now, what line of work did you do after you served in the military? After you served in, now you were in part of Korean War, is that right?
No, I joined during the Korean War. They were looking for pilots. By the time I got my commission and so on, my paying for pilot, that was over. So I was in a long peacetime war. So then Vietnam became my war. I was a young major by the time I went to war.
I see. Now, what line of work did you do after you served in the military, after you got out?
I got into politics. I was going to save the world. I just said, I'm going to set national policy rather than enforce it as a military guy. And I saw, the hassle of Vietnam, and we didn't really go to win and all those things. So anyway, I ran for, I won an election night against a congressman by the name of Tom Daschle, but I lost a 6-month recount. And eventually, though, I did serve in a Washington State Senate. I don't know how that ended up, but I was in the Washington State Senate, and I enjoyed public service, except it takes a lot longer to get things done there than it does as a fighter pilot.
So how did you wind up in Huntsville, Alabama, or Madison County?
We move every 6 years. It's written in stone somewhere. In the military, we move a lot. But somehow it's always turned out it was a job or this or that. And in this case, it was the only time we didn't move for our family. Our daughter's transferred down here. She's got 2 cute little granddaughters. And we basically retired, and she said, I'm going to Alabama. Why don't you come down? So we said, okay. And we moved to 4 houses between us. Neat spot.
Is this the first time you had been to Alabama when you first came?
Well, the Maxwell Air Force Base. But yeah, first time we've ever, we'd never lived here before.
Yeah. Leo, I'm sure you formed lasting friendships in the service. Do you still stay in contact with any of your friends?
I do. The ones that, in the military, you're close. But what I found out later, as a prisoner of war, summaries. I was there 6 years. 3 years and 3 years were a big difference. 3 years were you're allowed to solitary confinement, little teeny cells. Last 3 years, big cells. First 3 years, torture was normal. Last 3 years was abnormal. First 3 years, if you hear any sound coming out of you, they beat you. And so, but the people you lived next to, a couple times I lived in a small cell with people that you go through hell with. And so they're plus my backseater, I had a 2-place airplane, electronic warfare officer. So I'm going this way on the pilot. And today, this is our shoot down day, 30 April. And so on 30 April, Harry and I always call each other, and he survived. And so there's a few people, you say, I need $100, they don't say why, they say, what's your address, that thing.
They take care of you, don't they?
They do.
Watch out for you. Now, you have served, and do you still serve as the president of the Medal of Honor Society?
No, I'm the immediate past president.
Okay. What was that experience like?
It was like herding cats. At that time, there's 78 now. I think there were about the same because we've had some new recipients of this war. But Medal of Honor guys, they're good guys and all. But when you're the president, quote, president, and you're trying to get them to do something, you don't tell Medal of Honor guys what to do a lot. you can tell them.
You can ask, right?
but also, we know each other so well.
Right.
And we've been the same small group. When I came back from Hanoi, out of prison, there were like 330 of us. Now there's 78.
Wow.
But we know.
And scattered all over the country, I guess.
Yes, they are. Yep.
Yeah. Now, Tell us about, when did you first go to Vietnam, Leo?
I went to Vietnam in 1966, and I flew in a mission called Wild Weasels. Vietnam was the first war in which there were surface-to-air missiles, SAMs, and the Soviet Union put them in there. As you know, 2 wars in Vietnam, 1-minute history. There was an air war in North Vietnam, and there was a ground war in South Vietnam. I was in the air war part, and there were no ground troops. Our job was to stop supplies from getting to the bad guys in the South. And so the Soviet Union put SAMs in the North Vietnam, late 66, early 67, and that took away a chunk of airspace that they kind of eliminated for the guys carrying the dumb bombs into the on the POL and the roads and all that stuff. Right. So our industry and military got together, put some black boxes in a 2-place fighter, put electronic warfare in the back seat, experienced pilot like Leo in the front seat, and they call us Wild Weasels. Our job is to go in first, find these SAM sites, try to kill them or hold them down while the guys carrying the dumb bombs at war yet, in and out. And so because the Weasels were the first in, last out, the odds of finishing 100 missions when you got to go home was about 1 out of 3. And I was shot down on my 93rd mission going for 100. So.
In 1967.
I was shot down early 1967.
Now tell us about, you mentioned the Wild Weasel. What other types of aircraft did you fly while you were in service?
It was always fighters, single engine fighters. And I started out in, straight wing F-84s, and then the Century Series fighters came along, the F-86 and F-84 and those kind of airplanes. But and then F-100s, F-105. So just in the fighter business, as we got new airplanes into the inventory. There's no better job than being a fighter. To go supersonic on the deck or inverted, upside down, pulling G, and they pay you to do that. Until I got shot down, it's the best job I've ever had.
Leo, when you had some free time, say after a mission, what did you do for relaxation in Vietnam?
In Vietnam, I slept a lot. And had my learn. So it was.
So you'd have night missions and day missions, and what it varied.
Mostly day, but you'd take off at. You get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you go to a briefing and get the weather, get the intelligence, and then Wild Weasels first in. I always air refueled twice. You're first in there, and you're the last one coming out. And you're always sucking on fumes, trying to get the tankers up there, or landing at a forward base because you ran out of fuel. We were supposed to stay there in that area. High threat area till all the different, there'd be 4 or 5 flights, 4 airplanes each carrying bombs, 3 or 4 minutes apart. And first one, and we were supposed to be in there the whole time they were in and out. So we were always out of fuel, and it was a very demanding job.
Well, what is your favorite memory from serving in the military? And that, of course, that would include when you first went in and Vietnam as well.
I think I'll go back to combat. And when you went in there and you were trying to kill them and they were trying to kill you, if you were successful that day, you go in, you go over Laos, every field, go over Laos, in the North Vietnam, they're shooting SAMs at you and you're trying to kill them with your own bombs and so on. And if you won that day and you came out, you crossed Laos, still a bad guy country, and you crossed the Mekong River, that's Thailand. I've never been on drugs, but it was it must have been, I was euphoric.
Right.
I mean, it was truly a life and death contest, and you won that day.
Right.
I guess doing my job well and feeling like you really accomplished something that day was that was a highlight.
Yeah, you made it back.
Yeah, it wasn't a real. It was the biggest challenge I've ever faced, and when you beat the challenge, when you win that day, it's a high.
Yeah. Leo, tell us about the mission in April 1967 for which you would eventually receive the Medal of Honor.
I'd flown a mission that morning, and you're only supposed to fly 1 Weasel mission because they were so long, but they needed a spare that afternoon, and I filled in, and it was getting close to going home, so I was glad to get that 93rd one. At any rate, took off, and it was a fairly easy mission. I was going to attack a SAM site. I knew where it was, and I had a little missile called a Shrike. If you pull up your nose a certain degree so far, a little bit higher, you go a little farther, and I knew exactly how much to pull up from this mountain peak to put it on the target. And I passed the mountain peak. I was going to fly 2 minutes to accelerate to 600 knots, right speed, and then I was going to pull up, and I knew what I was going to do, and I'd put that missile. And during that time I was accelerating. If there's a mountain peak, there's a valley behind it. Well, there's a MiG orbiting in that valley down below me. 2 MiGs, then there are 2 of us here. And you didn't see them in the valley down there. They couldn't keep up at 600 knots. It's 700 miles an hour, basically. Right. And just before we were able to pull up and launch, and all of a sudden, I got an air-to-air signal in the cockpit, and wham, it went right up the tailpipe. And it felt a lot like a I guess, a massive sledgehammer hitting the airplane. Just instantly things fell apart.
Yeah.
And the cockpit instantly filled with smoke. I put my visor against the canopy. I couldn't see out. I took a couple breaths, and I was starting to get woozy and pass out. But the rudders were gone. The stick was gone. And I just said, go! That was the signal to my backseater. And I said, you'll have a second to get out. Because if he blows his canopy, we're a two-place airplane. We're going this way. If he blows his canopy and hesitates, and I blow my tank, I go, I'm going to burn him because I got a rocket going right over the top of it. So he had a lot of incentive to get out fast. But he went out, hit his back badly, and my feet went straight sideways. So when I hit the airstream, I was doing close to 700 miles an hour. 500 is a safe speed. But we'd seen airplanes badly hit like that while we were there. We were there for 92 missions. So, and people, they tried to slow down. As that happening, the airplane comes apart and he never gets out. So we decided early on, we'll take our injuries, but we're going to go right now, hit badly. And I still don't know if it was I saw it or felt it or both, but within a couple seconds after I left the airplane, this big massive implosion, and the airplane was bits and pieces. So we made the right decision. We were injured, but we got out.
Yeah. Now, it was just a few weeks before that you were on a mission. And for that mission, you were recommended for the Medal of Honor. Tell us about that mission.
Briefly, we killed a couple SAM sites with a missile and some guns, and my wingman got shot down. I got him over to some land. I had him turn a certain direction, and some foothills, thinking maybe rescue airplanes could come in, but it was too close to Hanoi. And I saw a MiG who was rolling in. There were two people in that airplane also. And a MiG rolled in trying to shoot the guy in the parachute, and that's bad sports. And I was able to get behind him, shot him down with an airplane. 105 is not an air-to-air, but. And then later I shot down another one. I gave up my tanker to a guy that was shorter on fuel than I, and after in and out and a lot of combat air-to-air, trying to direct people to get back in there, and I was all by myself for quite a while, Harry and I. And then very end, we were short on fuel. We about took up a tanker, and a guy called. He was shorter than I, so I gave him the tanker, and Harry and I discussed how much fuel we thought if we could be within 70 miles of the Mekong River from 35,000 feet, we could run out of fuel. We could glide with no engine and make it to the Mekong River, eject in Thailand, and we're home free. And we actually made it across the river, and we ran out of fuel before we touched down. And it was one of those long missions, and did a lot of things right, except I lost my wingman. I swore I was never going to lose a wingman, but that was a hard day.
I can understand. And okay, so a few weeks after that is when you were shot down. Tell us about now when you were your parachute. Did you land in the North Vietnamese side, or were they right there upon you? Or were you able to hide for a short while? Or tell us about that event.
Yeah, it's when I ejected, I was doing 600 knots again, and it was too fast. But injured. Pardon me. My canopy is gone. Pockets were off my parachute, off my sleeves, and about a fourth of the panels ripped out of the parachute because it was going too fast. And but I came down into the jungle. A couple things while I floated down. It's still vivid today, which is what 42 years ago today or so. But I looked down. I could see him shooting at me out of a clearing in the jungle. I was over a mountain in this jungle. And it was a small, and it was kind of dark. I could see him shooting. It's hard to hide in a parachute. It's real hard. But the thought I had, which is just a devastating thought, was I thought, I know I'm going to be killed or captured when I hit the ground. And we had friends who were shot down before us, and some of the people, the family never heard of what happened to them. And I thought, I'm the pilot of the airplane, I'm the boss of the airplane. My backseat and I, we were the best Wild Weasel crew going. We'd killed more SAM sites, we shot down MiGs. But I knew I made a mistake or we wouldn't be floating down. And I thought, if I'm killed when I hit the ground, will my wife ever find out? And the hard thought behind it was, it's my fault. I made a mistake, and because of me, I failed my family. It was kind of the thought I had.
Yeah.
It was hard, but also I did have. I'm not preaching, but I think everybody's life is better if they have some form of spirituality. We happen to be Christian, but believe in something greater than yourself, and your life is better. But at any rate, while I was floating down in my ear, I kept hearing it. It was like a little tape going over and over. No canopy, no helmet, no. But this voice kept saying to me, "Leo, you're going to make it. Leo, you're going to make it." And it's the first time I'd had a prayer preemptively answered. I loved that. I loved it. But it was a tough time.
What about Harry?
Harry made it. His back was broken, kind of. My legs were straight outward, so I couldn't walk or anything to get on the ground. But the airplane was, like I said, gone in a couple of seconds. We survived, and we both survived. We both came home and made it through those first 3 years, and then the treatment got better, and we made it out.
Great. And it was just a short while before the North Vietnamese.
I couldn't walk. So I landed in some. My chute hung up in a tree. I had a lanyard with me. You tie it up to your harness. That's what it's for. And I opened the harness and I kind of shoved it down. I was in a bunch of bamboo, And I tried to look for a place to hide. I couldn't. So I couldn't walk, so I was crawling up a mountain.
Right.
You go uphill because they're
Right.
below you,
Right.
and I could hear them. And within 10 or 15 minutes, they were around me. And there were probably 15 or 20 of them. I saw one real rifle. It looked like, and a couple that looked like maybe wooden rifles, but most of them were armed with machetes.
Right.
And the first thing to do is cut off your clothes. And these Vietnamese are as bright as anybody else, but these were tribe people in the mountain. They'd never seen a zipper. At least they didn't know how to use one. Zipper on your clothes, your G-suits, your
Right.
boots, and they didn't know how to use. But they sure know how to use machetes to cut everything off.
Wow.
So it was the start of a bad experience.
Leo, you received word in prison camp that you had been recommended to receive the Medal of Honor. Explain how you received that message. This is so interesting.
Well, the person from whom it came, to receive a Medal of Honor, it takes a year or two of research to make sure that you meet the requirements. You know, there's got to be foolproof, 2 eyewitnesses or now electronic data. It's got to be above and beyond. And it's got to be, if you didn't do the action for which you received the Medal of Honor, you would never not be criticized. It's that much beyond. At any rate, a person who did part of the research was one of the aviators in the squadron in which I shot down. And then he was subsequently shot down. So he was aware that the research was being done as I was recommended for the Medal of Honor. And then he got there and then he learned the TAP code. And with the TAP code, it came through. It takes a while to use that. Do I have 20 seconds to tell the TAP code?
You sure do, yes, sir.
The TAP code is it's kind of like a Morse code, except
Right.
that's dots and dashes. You can't send a dash through a foot of concrete. You have to have a tap. So you throw away the letter K. That's what we did. Got 25 letters left, right? So here's your 25, 5 rows of 5. You got A, B, C, D, E, F, next one. G, H, I, and then the L, but there's no L because we threw away, so there's no case. So at night you tap GBU on the prison wall to the cell next to you because God bless you. And even if you're by solitary and you're in stocks, you can hobble over there and get there. That's very comforting to know there's an American 12 inches away from me. And G was, it would go, it's the second row down, second letter row, that's G. B is the first row, second one, so it's, U is 4 or 5. And it's like typing. You learn how to do it and you get used to it. And I like to joke because 2/3 of us were Air Force officers there. We were all officers because we were all aviators.
Right.
There was a 3rd Navy and there were 5 Marines, and we were all aviators.
Yeah.
And that was ratio. And so I'm in a crowd and I see an Air Force guy. I'll say, well, you and I we could tap about 15 words a minute, after we get used to it. I said, this Navy guy, I'd slow down to about 12. And I always tell those Marines, I said, we didn't bother to teach the 5 Marines, but really, it didn't really matter. But I just like to give them a bad time because once you got on dirty pajamas, you're lousy looking, you're scruffy, but so we looked about the same.
You have to have some levity. I mean, even in a place like that. But all of this was kept secret while you were being held for 6 years.
It was, yeah.
Wow.
The more rank you had or the more notoriety you had, the more torture you had.
You would have been tortured even more or possibly killed had they known that.
Yeah.
Now, you spent 6 years in a prison camp. Can you give our students some idea of what it was like being locked up for so long and how you made it through that terrible ordeal?
The first 3 years, you were mostly solitary. I spent a year in a 5 by 6 foot cell. They called it different. They had more than one camp. They had a little perfect camp. They called it camp punishment. It was named right. A few of us were out there. But what they wanted was just dumb stuff. They wanted propaganda. The Korean War, remember in Korea there were some Americans stayed behind because they were brainwashed?
Right.
And they were very good interrogators. In Vietnam, they're bright people all, but they didn't know how to interrogate. They just know how to beat and brutalize, break bones, use straps, kill, just really brutal stuff. And they would try to get you to the point where you'd make some dumb statement like, Vietnam is really a great country under communism, and we come from a bad country. Dumb stuff like that. Right. But you're sworn to give name, rank, serial number, date of birth. That's it. That's the Geneva Convention.
Right.
Plus you got the Code of Conduct. And so they would break you. And I broke more than once, and you'd give some dumb statement. But it was very difficult those first 3 years. And then the last 3 years, generally speaking, Ho Chi Minh died. Vietnam realized people started organizing against the Vietnamese. Our families got other people to write letters and wear POW bracelets and said to Vietnam, look, you've signed the Geneva Convention also, start following it. All we want, the family said of the North Vietnamese, we want a full accounting of who's there, because they didn't know who was captured and who wasn't making it, and we want you to follow the Code of Conduct, stop the Geneva Convention. And at any rate, for several other reasons, they moved us into big cells. 20, 30, 40 people per cell out of solitary, much better. Torture became abnormal. You could talk out loud. Some of the windows, they took the bricks out so you could see outside. And what we did there is we started, whoever knew the most about any subject, we'd teach a course. And somebody taught Spanish, somebody taught math, or whatever it might be, just ways of passing time.
Right.
One of the things that I did, I'd like to get in because I think it's important. One of the things I did, we all did different good things,
Right.
Designed houses, but I decided I was going to keep track of what we talked about, what's important to us. After about 2 weeks, you didn't have pencil or paper, so I mentally had a piece of paper and mentally had a pencil and a clipboard, so I looked important, you know. Mental. And so if we talked about the family, I'd write that. So it turned out after about 2 weeks, there were only about 20 different subjects we talked about. Here, I don't know how many we would, but 20, but that was pretty much it. So after about 2 weeks, I said, that's it. So I totaled up. What was the most important? What did we talk about the most? Because aviation is such a good job, if you like to be an aviator, I thought work would be number one.
Right.
Came in 17.
Really?
I'm not knocking work. You got to do it, but you got to provide. But what we talked about there was 4 F's: family, friends, faith, and fun. That's what we talked about. And most of us were married, most of us had kids, but it didn't matter. But family, that's so important when you don't have it and you long for it and you wonder if you'll ever see them again. But faith, like I said, we don't talk about religion, faith, and much here, much up here, but there it was important. We talked about it more. And fun things we did, I mean, that's a big part. And I tell people, especially young people who get so wrapped up in work sometimes, that's good, but surround yourself with these 4 F's, fun, family, faith. Your life is going to be so much fuller if you make sure you budget some things like that in.
Helped you make it through.
The other thing, we had learned a lot of lessons, and I like to say it because it's a clever way of saying it, but the best lesson I learned over there, the easiest, and it's something that pops in my mind sometimes a day, every day or weekly, it's not a bad thing, but I say it this way: if the doorknob is on the inside, it's a good day.
Yeah. That's a simple statement, but it's,
The freedom we have to go in and out that door,
Yeah.
and we get, just by being Americans, just by born here.
Right.
I looked at some of the Vietnamese kids over there, the guards. Nothing wrong again with being a Vietnamese, but if you're born in communism, your job is to torture prisoners.
Right.
They don't have any freedom at all. And I thought, just by my birthright, anybody's born in this country, you're handed a platter full of rights and opportunities and freedoms and all the things we just given those. Now, later in life, you go to the military, whoever, you work a good job in the private sector, and you earn that. But we're given that just by birthright.
Yeah,
we don't really appreciate that until it's taken away. But I like to remind people now.
Right. Leo, what did you have to eat while you were in prison camp?
First 3 years, we had twice a day. We had no clocks or anything, but we had a bowl of green weed soup, we call it, just greens, like spinach or turnips or something, just boiled, just the greens. No seasoning or nothing, and we had a saucer about as big as my hand we got steamed rice. And they seemed to hide a lot of little rocks and debris in there. It was kind of dirty, but that was twice a day. You had green weed soup and rice. In the last 3 years, sometimes instead of the rice, we got a small little piece of bread about that little French loaf about that big around. And what was good about that was because you had a lot of time. They had a lot of weevils. Remember, there's sometimes weevils get in flour.
Right.
Like when I was a kid, that happened. And so we'd get bread. We'd have contests. Who had the most weevils? We'd take that apart, a little teeny piece at a time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And it was kind of a contest. Whoever won had the most weevils. Plus, you got the most protein. We figured.
Right. They would have figured. Now, what if you had like a toothache or something like that? I mean, how would you deal with something like that? You just dealt with it, I guess. I mean,
and also the last 3 years, remember I mentioned we had some bread once in a while?
Right.
With a little bit of bread. Rice didn't seem to work, but a little bread. If you got a bad tooth, and there was a lot of bad teeth there, you would just pack the hole full of bread or something, to stop the pain. When you breathe, air goes in and out. Toothache, and that was about 2 years before we came home. We were in big cells, but we weren't getting any medical care. Outside, we used to go out maybe once every day or two, and there was a little gutter there, ran by this concrete tank. We'd pour a bucket of water over ourselves, a rubber bucket, and go out in the wall, and somebody found a little packet. It was a little packet of razor blades, just like old-fashioned razor, straight edge on both sides. And that was a phenomenal, because one of the things it was really good for was, we had a lot of Hep C teeth, and now you got something you can cut your gum with, which is that was a big relief on pain sometimes.
Right.
So, one of the people over there had studied hypnosis, and with the TAP code, Ted Ballard, he taught me hypnosis, self-hypnosis. I was never as good as Ted or some people, but if I had one form of pain, I could kind of hypnotize myself or isolate that. So we had a lot of gimmicks we tried to use, and it helped.
Leo, you mentioned that just some changes came about later on in your last couple of years of being in the prison camp. Were you able to receive any letters from home while being held in
I received, I think, a total of 4 letters.
Really?
They were 6 lines long. And they were allowed to write us. We were allowed to write a letter every 2 months, as were our families the last 3 years. But most of the letters didn't get there. And something that it still just hurts me to think about it. Our families were allowed to write us a 6-line letter every 2 months. My wife religiously would write those letters, of course, like all families would. And she would put them in the post office. She happened to be in Sioux, went home to her family, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and our daughter there. About 2 months after or so, the letter would come back, most of them, unopened, and stamped on the outside of the envelope was deceased. You can imagine how hard that is on a family.
Yeah.
Why they took it out on their families. We could maybe understand. We were dropping about it. But it was so cruel. I'm sorry, I'm going to cough.
That's right. Were you aware of the protest back home regarding Vietnam, and what was your feelings on that?
We were, because we had what they called a camp radio, a little speaker like an old-fashioned car. You turn the radio and hear it go click. We'd hear it click, and they did have it wired to the bars in the cell. Even if you're solitary, and you'd hear it click on, and they would say, "Here are the news," or "Here is a new," if they had one item, they'd say. Yeah. But they talked. It was all pro-Vietnam, anti-American. We kept track one time of how many they would talk about a battle in South Vietnam, because that's where they'd talk about a battle and how many people they seriously destroyed or injured. And we would keep track. And after over a 6-month period, they claimed they wiped out the entire United States military in 6 months. They exaggerated a lot, but they talked about the anti-war movement, Veterans Against or Pentagon and stuff, the demonstrations, people going to Canada. So it was very disappointing. And then once in a while, another shoot down somebody would get shot down in the last year or so, and they started bombing again. Well, they would bring some news in with the tap coder, but then if they moved into a big cell where we could talk to them. So we had some update about what was going on in the country. It was hard to accept when the country, and plus our families, we knew they were kind of on the bad end of that too.
Right. Now you served, of course, during the war, and through the years I'm sure you've seen a few war movies. Do you think war is depicted accurately in most of the movies that you've seen?
Well, you made an assumption that it's not real accurate. I just don't go to war movies. I've seen a couple because I went on an airliner, and that's the only thing playing.
Right.
And I was the technical advisor for a film called Hanoi Hilton, and it was about prison, and it was produced pretty well. And I was the technical advisor on that when we lived in California. It didn't quite capture all the torture, it didn't capture boredom, but it was a fairly, they tried to be accurate. They didn't try to put sex in it or whatever.
Right,
They made it. But most of the movies I did not see.
I see.
Just
didn't care to.
didn't care to.
How would you describe to young people what it's like to serve in war? The thoughts you have of possibly being killed or wounded during a battle or losing your life in a prison camp?
It's hard. It's hard to motivate young people to say, join the military, and especially if you get to fight in the military, fight and put your life on the line. But that's what gives our kids the freedom. What you were born with, we all we're given this freedom by birthright, and that birthright, that freedom comes from a lot of combat every 20 years or so. Our country is, and some people agree with that particular war or not, but that's no country's perfect, and we're not. But having some experience and lived a long time around the world, we're by far better than anybody else. But it's a hard message to sell. But when I was in a cell one time, I with a little rusty nail, I just scrounged in that little 5 by 6 foot cell for a year. The windows were bricked up. They put it in this way, so the mortar was only about that thick, rather than that. Right. And I'd drilled a little peephole. I spent hours there. And one time, as a guard walked by, and they gave us Vietnamese names. If you gave your Major Little Thorsness, they beat you. We had to use our Vietnamese names. We had to bow 9 degrees with the door open again when it closed, just to dump your bucket in the sewer. But at any rate, as that guard walked by one day, and this thought, it was an image that went through my mind faster than you could say. I saw myself flipping a coin. I caught it, and I put it down, and I remember I took my eye off the peephole, this imaginary coin, to see what I got. Sure enough, it was a diamond that had tails. I mean, I had heads, so the guard had tails. But the thought behind that was back to this freedom thing. I thought, no matter how long he lives, he won't get to do it half. I got to marry who I wanted. I had all these freedoms and choices, and And I felt sorry for that kid. He was probably 20 and I was 35 or so. And I thought, if I die tomorrow, I've lived a fuller life than he ever will by being born in this society where we got our freedom. So, but that doesn't come free, as you know. It takes people that will stand up and go to the military and fight for our country because people challenge us.
Right. And it will continue.
And it will continue.
Leo, is it okay to be afraid or scared while serving in a war?
If you're not, there's something wrong with you. But you're very quickly, the first time you get over there, the very first mission you're going to fly up in combat, first time you've been in combat, and I pull in other people too, but you say to the people, your mouth gets really dry, so be sure and chew some gum while you're up there because it's going to help you talking to radio and so on. Well, your mouth gets so dry it sticks to your top of your tongue and your teeth. And then when they really, they're really mad at, when you get down, they're not happy with you. But we all had a great time doing that because their fear was stuck to their teeth.
I hope it would stay there. Right? Now share with us what or who prepared you to take the actions for which you received the Medal of Honor.
Just training, just the military. I know all the recipients well, and except the last 6 or 7, I know them. But every military recipient will tell you, there are others out there as or more deserving than we wear the Medal of Honor. We just kind of lucked out. We were in the wrong place at the right time, or however you want to say that. But we did the right thing for somebody threw themselves on a hand grenade and saved everybody else's life, and they survived it somehow, or didn't. But that was an instant of time they made the decision. Or some people like, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, Bud Day, Jim Stockdale, received it for being prisoners of war. But generally, it's a very short thing during the time you're doing it. But you do it not because you say, I think I'll win the medal. You don't. But not because I'll get the Medal of Honor. You do it because it's the right thing to do. You do what you're supposed to do, and I mean that's life. It doesn't matter if you're in school here. You have to have the courage not to cheat. You have to be brave enough to do the right thing. I'm an Eagle Scout and I get military. We all have taken a lot of oaths. I'll do my best and all that stuff. You raise your hand, and I'm not that bright. I decided I could put all this stuff together in 5 words, and that became my mantra when I was probably 22, 23. And that's simply do what's right, or stands alone, and help others. If people will live by those 5 words, their life is going to be okay. It means you don't cheat, you don't use drugs. All the things, the challenges we all have as peers growing up, but I think the kids nowadays, they got a lot more challenges in front of them, a lot more temptations than we had. But they can do it, and those who do, they excel.
Now, you touched on this somewhat, but I want you to, a little more in detail, talk about the process, the evaluation, if you will, how it's determined that someone will receive the Medal of Honor.
Okay, very quickly, I think I can remember all 4 of them. I can remember 4 things. One is you have to be in the military. Right. You do not have to be a citizen. You have to be in the military. You have to be fighting for the United States. You have to do what's called above and beyond, and that simply means if you didn't do what you did, no one would criticize you because it was that much beyond what your job is. And then 4th, there has to be 2 eyewitnesses. And nowadays they can do it electronically to prove what at least a minimum of 2 eyewitnesses could prove that you did what is claimed to be done.
Leo, can a woman receive the Medal of Honor?
Yes, and one has. And it's been a long time. Her name was Mary Walker, and she was in the Civil War. And she received the Medal of Honor. She was a surgeon, a female surgeon, which she was way ahead of her time. And she not only helped the Union troops, she went over and helped some of the Confederates. And then they captured her and they kept her. And then later there was a lot of prison exchanges in the Civil War. And she was exchanged in one of those, and she was very proud to say she was exchanged man for man. And she lived a full life. But she's the only Medal of Honor recipient, and that's simply because until recently women were not in combat. Now they can fly airplanes, and there's always an argument: should they be fully in combat with the military and front lines, and can they carry somebody out there, so on. And it's becoming more and more so that women are in combat now, and so it'll happen.
All right. You touched on this also just a little bit, but I want to get more of an answer. Are there cases where someone in the military could be deserving of the Medal of Honor because of their actions, but for whatever reason it could not be documented?
Sure, and I can give you about 32 examples. In World War II, there were no black Medal of Honor recipients, and there were no Asian Pacific Island Medal of Honor recipients. That was looked at. under Carter and Bush, and they went back and looked at medals that people received that were high medal, but they were not, and they said, and so it came out, it was pure discrimination. And so there were 7 black recipients received the Medal of Honor in about 1995 or somewhere near, and also 23 or 27 Pacific Island. And one of those Pacific Island Asian people that received the Medal of Honor, we all would know the name, he just recently died, Senator Inouye from Hawaii.
Right.
His whatever the medal was, it was upgraded to the Medal of Honor. And but in Vietnam, that was not there. I didn't see that. But that was other times where it says there's 2 eyewitnesses, nobody survived. That happens a lot.
Right.
They're all dead.
Right.
So there's
can,
and it's, once in a while it just it fell through the cracks or whatever. And occasionally this will be corrected. It takes a special act of Congress because it has to be rewarded within 2 years. Is basically a rule. So if you pick these people up much later, or one person will be recognized, and it was just a flat oversight.
Memories are not as clear, or whatever,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Now, you have said Medal of Honor recipients are really just ordinary people who did something extraordinary. Talk to our students a little more about what you mean by that.
What I mean is, it's easy to be average. And I'm not saying, but in my case, we were the only airplane left over North Vietnam. Everybody else, we were the Eagle, we were the Weasel, and 2 Weasels had problems. They left early, and my wing was shot down. I'm by myself up there. And so we're going out to get our wingman shot down, and so we go out and get some fuel, and I call another flight and say, I need some help, come on back in with us, because there's a lot of MiGs in here. We got to go in and see if we can get a rescue to these people shot down, my wingman. There was nobody available. There's always mix-ups in combat, and there always are. Something goes wrong. But my backseat and I, we talked very briefly. We said, Harry, I said, you know our odds if we go back in by ourselves. And I said, are you comfortable? He said, we're the only ones that know where they are. Let's go. I mean, and that was an extraordinary thing he said, and I felt the same way. But I don't know if that's a good example because it's about Harry and I.
Right.
But it is an example of where no one would have criticized it for not going back in there. So what was your question again?
Well, the extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
Ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Yeah, and so you and I are I'm looking at these high schools right here. Right. Next year we're in the military and we're in combat somewhere, and someone throws a grenade right in front of that young man right there. And there's nothing that says he's got to drop his body on the grenade to protect you and I or that person standing next to him. But he does it. That's knowing darn well the odds are 99% he's going to be dead. But he's going to, he also knows he's going to save us. That is extraordinary. And there's about 3 now living recipients who did that exact thing. They threw themselves on a grenade and they survived it. Most of them died, of course. But that is extraordinary. And that's an instant of what caused him to do that, right at that instant.
Have you been back to Vietnam since the war ended?
We did. My wife and I went with 5 other POWs and a film crew who negotiated a year to get into the prisons and film. And they did. They had, and so we did that.
I want to bring this up. This is very important, I think. We all have read articles that stated winner of the Medal of Honor or he won the Medal of Honor. That makes it sound like a contest, and it's really not a contest. Talk about that for us, Leo.
Well, there's not much to say. 99% of the people you run into, they'll say, oh, you're a Medal of Honor winner.
Yeah, it just slips out.
That's so normal. But you're right. It's not a contest. You never go to win the Medal of Honor because 2/3 of them are dead. It's posthumous. 2/3 are awarded posthumous. And so you're a recipient of something you did. But it doesn't bother us. But I love to correct people. I don't know much thing that they don't know. So wait a minute. Don't you mean recipient? Oh, yeah.
Leo, what are your thoughts on people wearing military medals that are not rightfully theirs?
Oh, I'd just say maybe they're scumbags. Cleaned up words like that. No, it's so wrong. Military people give so much. And I don't care if you end up serving in Hawaii or in Hanoi in a prison camp. When you raised your hand, you said, Uncle Sam, I'll sign my life. I'm pay the order of my life. If I have to, I'll serve. I'll give that. And then they end up maybe in combat or not, but they put their hand up. So people who don't do that, people who claim they're military and they're not, that's really cheap. I have just no, and we now have a law that says stolen valor. It's a national law, but also it's going to be passed, or it's just passed here in Alabama. The states will pass that now also. And so that people are going to be prosecuted. If they get anything of value, i.e. you go to the bar and say, I'm a Medal of Honor guy or Purple Heart. If somebody buys you a drink, you got something of value. And they could be prosecuted, I guess.
Yeah. We're just about to conclude our interview here, Leo. What would you like for young people, especially our students, to learn and hopefully remember from your military experience?
I would like for the young people to know that serving in the military is an honorable thing. It's a noble thing to do. And many do. They volunteer. It's a volunteer, and we have enough. But I talked to some of our OTC students not long ago and said, stick with our OTC, go to the military. And nowadays you can serve in the National Guard and never have to go full time. You can go a couple weekends during the year and a couple of weekends, and they can still, but if someone's got a military, if you take two people, this man's been in the military or this woman and this was not, and they go to a job look for a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. The one that's been in the military, the odds are that person's going to be the manager there. The one that's not been in the military, the odds are they're going to be running the cars and cleaning them up. I mean, there's so much to be. I've talked to a zillion veterans, and I'll say, well, what did you think of the military? Oh, that golly, blankety blank sergeant, blah blah, and so on. Yeah. And I'll say, well, are you glad you served? Oh, yes, sir. I wouldn't take $1 million. Yeah. I mean, you get so much out of, even if it's 2 years of military. Right. It's so worthwhile, and it's so worthwhile to our country. I just hope that more young people will say, let me in. They're going to gain so much from it, and they're going to feel good about themselves.
And it can be beneficial later in life as well.
All their life. Yeah, and I still run into people say, yeah, the biggest mistake I ever made was I didn't serve, I should have gone in while I was in Vietnam. I had a chance, or Korea, or wherever it is, or Vietnam. Right. Here now, they see worse. Yeah.
Leo, thank you for participating in our Price of Freedom interview series and allowing us to preserve your military experience for the people of this community. And thank you, sir, for your service to our country.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good job. I appreciate being here. Yeah. All right. Best to you.
Thank you for joining us for this special ETV broadcast of an interview with the late Leo Thorsness, Medal of Honor recipient and true American hero. For ETV, I'm Tom Kennemer.